Welcome to Not Starving Artist, the podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Benson, money coach and equity actor. I am your financial cheerleader, here to help you build your financial confidence and have power over your money. The best part, no budgeting or bi-weekly paychecks required. I went from being a broke BFA grad having weekly panic attacks about money to a financially confident, wealth-building actor and business owner. Money gets to feel fun, simple, and sexy, and I am going to show you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited for this interview today. Today, I have on one of my incredible clients, Emily, who is a voiceover artist, and we have been working together for over a year now. And I'm going to let her introduce herself as we dive into all the things we've done together over the past year. Emily, go for it.
Awesome. My name is Emily Wold, like Brooke said. I run my own business. It's called Fable Hound. And I have been hustling at the VO game for about 5 or 6 years. I come from a very starving artisty background. I come from a background of a classically trained actor, got my MFA, hopped around all sorts of different places around the country, just going where the work was. And, struggled in big cities and hustled in small cities, kind of went everywhere. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I discovered voiceover work. And it was while I was in my hometown. And I have always been someone who loves to look for business opportunities and loves to look for business ideas. But I hadn't really connected that reality with my work somehow. I had always worked really hard and tried really hard at everything, but just hadn't found kind of the path forward in my career. And so I found this business opportunity, voiceover work, and I decided that I was going to take a swing. And I swung big, and it's been super successful. Like I said, I've been hustling for 5 or 6 years now, and I'm getting to the place where my income has just exploded and enabled me to do an amazing amount of wonderful things that I wanted in my life, but hadn't really uncovered yet because of some limitations I had in my income, but also in my mindset. So working with Brooke has really unlocked a lot of that for me. And now I am in year 2 of my business, running my own business, and it's going very well.
Yeah, let me brag on you for a second, because the next question I'm going to ask you is, at the beginning of when we started working together, when you decided to join money coaching, what was going on in your brain, what was going on in your business, and all of that. So before we do that, just to set the stage for where you're currently at, in this past year, you had your very first $500K year in business, $500,000 that you made with voiceover. You own 2 homes, you're clearing your schedule, you're getting excited about homesteading and exploring and enjoying your money. Like where you are now, it's so incredible to see that journey for you. And we're going to talk all about that journey. So now set the stage for us of like where you were a year ago. What was in your head? What was happening in your bank accounts? What was going on?
Yes, there was a lot. That's probably the fastest way to say it. It was a lot because I had this huge influx of cash, and because I had just launched out on my own. Previous to starting my own business, I was working for a local studio here in my hometown, and that was great. But then it became really obvious to me that I needed to branch out. And when I did that, I felt very nervous. I didn't know if I was capable of managing the size of career that I seemed to be having. And I would say I was pretty eaten up with almost like this panicked desire to do the right thing with my money. And I use this phrase over and over again in my own mind and with Brooke, just this idea of like, I need to be wise with my money. And I was doing like all the things that I felt like I knew how to do. And yet I was still feeling this like panicked energy almost all the time because I just never felt like I was doing enough. And yeah, in our coaching, that's been something that we've come back to over and over again. And turns out it doesn't have to do just with how I manage my money, which has been a great lesson. So yeah, that's definitely where I was with like this panic desire to be wise and figure out what I needed to do to optimize everything, and really not even knowing why that panic was there. And it's been an amazing process to kind of uncover what that's been about.
Yeah. So let's talk about, we just read through your very first intake form from February of 2022. And it was like a big influx of cash, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I want to make the right decisions with it. So I want to talk about your headspace, because so many people think that more money will solve all of their money problems. And it's like, once I just have more, if I get that huge influx of cash, everything will feel better. So you got this influx of cash. Talk to me about what that like tipping point was of like, oh, fuck, I'm making money now. And now I have anxiety. I need to do something with it. Talk about like starving artist mindset. What was the tipping point? And then what your fears were that came up with that more money?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it had just been, I would say that in my career, I was used to just barely squeaking by. Like that was, I mean, my reality before voiceover was like, you know, it was low. It was poverty level low. And I always made it. Like I've always considered myself to be a really plucky person. And I think a lot of that started to come into question for me when I had my first year of making six figures. And all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, I have always kind of planted or rooted my reality in this idea of being like, I'm poor, but I'm plucky and I'm a hustler. And to watch half of that equation dissolve before my eyes was alarming, totally unlooked for, totally unexpected. Because I had kind of settled into this reality that I would always be a starving artist. And I think for so many of us in the arts or in creative industries, we kind of plant our flag on that hill and say like, well, we're part of this club. We do what we love and we're really good at it, but nobody will pay us, damn it. And so it was wild to find myself just like adjusting what I did just a little bit. Same musculature in terms of what I did as an actor, same like skeletal structure. I'm still acting in the booth every day, but I just pivoted a little bit. And then it was like, oh, this is marketing and people pay for marketing. And so that was an incredible discovery. But what I found was that a lot of my identity was bound up in the struggle of being an artist. And I had to deal with that on a deeper level than I anticipated. And I was just feeling, I mean, back to your point, Brooke, like this idea that if I could just make money, if I could just make more money, then everything would kind of smooth out. I'm sure that I had that in my mind, but that is not what I found in my experience. In my experience, it was panic inducing. Like I said, this huge influx of cash. All of a sudden I was someone who pulled in six figures in a year and I did not know what to do. I didn't have any systems in place when we started working together. I had done my darndest to invest, to save, but I mean, that was kind of all I knew how to do. I had researched, I had worked, but I still had all of these feelings, these like hangers on of panic and there's no way this can last and you don't know how to manage money. You're bad with money. I had all of these feelings and I had no idea what to do with them. And that's the moment that I came to your doorstep and I was like, hey, she does financial coaching. That seems like something that could be really good for me. And it was just kind of this knee-jerk reaction to this like growing sense of anxiety, over my finances, which really colored a lot of my life. And when I came to you, that's what I was hoping to solve.
Yeah. And even in your forums, I remember at the very beginning, it was very focused on, I want to make the right decisions.
Yes.
I have a huge lack of education. I need to fill the gaps for like me as an artist has no idea what rich people do with their money. Where's the checklist for the rich people things? Because now I'm making the rich people money. I'm still an artist, but I'm making rich people money and I need to know their checklist so I do the right things. That was the energy that you came in with. And so because inside of coaching, we always start with strategy first, get it out of the way, and then we move into the thought stuff. Let's talk about the strategy that we immediately implemented. And one of those was a system for your business money. Like all of this money that was now in your field where you were like, I'm investing some, I'm saving some, but there's no real purpose. We created a money flow and a structure of paying yourself, right? Where that money now had intention and purpose. Talk me through what you remember about that process and what we set up.
Yeah. You know, in the beginning, there was just so much confusion for me about how my business was structured, even legally. And I was working with a CPA at that time who was fantastic, did a great job. But it was all kind of, it was all opaque to me. Like everything was happening behind this glass of like finance, finance expertise that I just did not understand. And
we'll get to taxes.
Yeah, right. And it continually made me feel kind of stupid because I was running this business and I was bringing in just a crap ton of money and, blowing my own mind every month by how much money I was bringing in. And then I felt like I wasn't allowed to touch it. I was like, well, how much of this is mine? And it's like, okay, well, it's all yours. You made it all. But there was so much fear around like mishandling the money. And so the idea of this was something that was really important in the beginning, the idea of looking at all of it, just look, that has unlocked so much for me as we've gone on. Because I have this thing that I do in many areas of my life, surprise, surprise, but particularly with finances where it's like, if I just don't look at it, then nothing can go wrong. And, that harkens back to the days when I had $30 in my bank account. And I was afraid to look because I knew I wanted to spend $3 on frozen yogurt, but I was afraid that I didn't have that in my account or that it would take me into overdraft. And so it was just a like, don't look at it, don't talk about it, don't think about it, and maybe you'll be okay. And a lot of those things carried over, even in the moment when I started to work with 6 figures of income. And so the idea of using these money systems to really look at the flow and figure out exactly where things are going, but with a different sort of energy than like budget every penny, which is something I had done before, like the idea of give every dollar a job. And there were times in my life when that served me, but with as much income as I was bringing in, I needed larger systems. I needed to go beyond like dollar to dollar. I needed to figure out like how to route huge amounts of money to helpful places that made me feel secure and that I could see and that I could understand. And so just the idea of starting with looking at everything and thinking, okay, when a client pays me, where does it go? Okay, when my business, I need to run a payroll. Okay, right, because I'm the employee for my business. I have an LLC. And so I'm going to route it this way. I'm going to run payroll for myself. I'm going to figure out what that means. And then I'm going to set up some high yield savings accounts. And I'm going to really look at and begin to route my money in a way that matches the expertise that I'm developing and that I had, but I felt like I didn't have.
And with that, you started to have financial CEO parties, which has now become a coined term in the Not Starving Artist community. I want everyone to hear this. Emily is the person who came up with that term. I talked to her. I was like, we're going to have monthly money dates where you are sitting down and you are putting on your CEO hat, where you are a business owner and you put your CEO hat on and you look at your numbers and you make decisions about them. You get paid, you follow up on invoices that are unpaid, like all of those things. And I was like, that's going to be your monthly money date. And you came back one time and you were like, so I had like a financial CEO party. And I was like, fuck yes to that term. That is exactly what everyone needs to do. So I just want to give you credit. So with those financial CEO parties, I want you to talk about that process, because that was the space that we crafted for you to be able to look at your numbers and then also implement some of that tactical stuff. Tell me about them.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that spirit of celebration and like partying was really important for me in the beginning, because again, just looking at things brought me a lot of anxiety. And it made me, it was so funny. I remember so vividly when I started looking at things. And this was another thing that I came to you with. Even though I was making so much money, I had this feeling that it wasn't enough. It was like, I'm making so much more. And yet it was like all the time my fists were just like, just clamping down because I just continued to carry this, mindset of scarcity. So in the beginning, that spirit of celebration was incredibly important because it all revolved around the process of retraining my brain and my gut and my heart to say, this is good, you're okay, and you're capable of this, just as you are. I think when we started coaching, I had this idea that in order to be good with my money, I had to become someone else.
Mm.
And so the idea of a CEO or a CFO meeting every month, like I just couldn't see myself doing it. It was like, well, that's not who I am. Like I'm not a CFO. And so when via coaching gave me the permission to make it my own, what it inevitably became was this playful, fun CFO, CEO party. And so it was like, well, I can light my candle and be a CFO. I can drink my coffee and be a CFO. I can sit at my desk and listen to music. And, I think my first CFO or CEO party, I had like 5 drinks.
I remember this picture that you sent me in Voxer, and I was like, look at all your beverages.
I don't know why. I was just like, it was a beverage day. It was like, I had the kombucha that I had made. I had my coffee. I had my water. I had milk. Like I just had all these beverages because I was just trying to make it fun and still be myself and get these tasks done instead of just plugging them into my daily, my daily work as a voiceover actor and trying desperately to like catch them when I could and be like, oh, let me send this invoice. Oh, let me remind this person that they haven't paid me. And it was just this frenzied energy. And that was so different from what I ended up establishing as a CEO party, where I sat down and I had a list, and my list had to-dos, sure, but it also had accomplishments, things that I had done, celebrations that I could celebrate because of, the goals that I had met or something unexpected that had happened, forcing myself to like throw myself a party and like make that the big financial event of the month. Yeah. That was super powerful for me and continues to be super powerful.
Yeah. And what I think is so cool too, and again, the power of staying in coaching for as long as you have, it's like these things have shifted for what you've desired and like how your business has grown. So with the financial CEO party specifically, you started with one a month, and then maybe like 6 months in, you were like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit like I'm just doing tasks, but I'm not doing this like, we were talking about goal setting. That's what it was. You were like, I don't have space where I'm actually just seeing my business as an owner and making these high level decisions of like the vision of it, where I want it to go, because I'm invoicing and I'm doing the money things and I'm doing the taxes. So you decided, this was your decision. You were like, what if I do 2 a month? One where I do that tactical stuff and one where I do the big vision. So you, again, like having that CEO identity to then make that decision of like CEO parties work, but then how am I even going to make it work more for me and shift it? Tell me about that shift for you and what you remember.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the beginning, it was just like one big meeting a month where I did all the business owner tasks. And that worked great for a few months. And then I was like, man, you know what's different? My CEO tasks and my CFO tasks, because I was spending all of that time doing CFO stuff. It was all like moving money, contributing to my 401k, moving things around from different bank accounts, making sure my payroll was run, checking on these unpaid invoices, following up with folks. It was all of that. And none of like, wait a minute, how do I feel like my business is doing? What are some ways that I would like to implement growth? And like, what are some goals I would like to set? And so what it has become now is twice a month, I do CFO parties. And then once a month, I do CEO parties. And the CFO is like task heavy. It's looking at the numbers. It's analyzing how things are going. It's looking at my quarter, my year, whatever. And it's invoicing and it's following up with clients. But my CEO parties are like, okay, what kind of new ventures do I want to break into? Is there any genre that's untapped for me that I would like to reach into as a voiceover actor? How am I feeling in my business? And it's a time for me to put my CEO hat on and say to myself, how are you doing creatively? Are you feeling burnt out? Like, how are you managing your time? And that's been something really important, even in just like the last month. Like, I feel like I've been able to start relating to these two different halves of myself, and it's like, it's a healthy, helpful thing, because it's like, I'm able to put on my CEO hat and look at the business as a whole. But then I'm also able to kind of look at myself as an employee and think like, well, how's she doing? She feeling burnt out? She working too much? Is the hustle, serving her? The answer is no. And like being able to analyze not only my business, but also myself in the business. It's very helpful to not try to be wearing all of those hats at the same time, but instead setting myself up for success by giving each of those roles that I play in my business their due in terms of time. And that like that kind of separation and intentional like gaze at my business and at myself in the business has been super helpful.
Right. And even that much more important for a self-employed creative, for someone who does creative work inside of their own business, because your like creative brain and what you do inside of the booth, what I do inside of a rehearsal room, like it needs to be wooed and like protected, and like you get to play and be a child and whatever. For the pressure of like CEO and business and finances to be on like that glittery part of you, you need to create space for her to go and be safe and play and do whatever she needs to do. And then you're also crafting time where it's like, okay, now I'm going to be CEO. So you are able to go and have that time to play and be glittery. I've got you, CEO hat is on. We're talking about where we're going. And then also like the employee CFO, let's do the task. Let's make sure this thing keeps running. So you have the space to go be glittery. So it's so important for creatives to even identify all of those different versions of themselves and craft space for each. So you mentioned celebrations. Let's talk about celebrations because at the beginning of our time together, I remember so much of your homework was, have you made a joy purchase? Have you celebrated yet? What was your celebration? How are you celebrating? Like you would come with these huge wins. You were like, I just booked this gig. I did my money date and here's what I found. And I was like, how are you going to celebrate? And you were like, ooh, I don't know yet. So talk to me about your process with celebrating and how that progressed for you.
Yeah, that one, like, I think that was, in hindsight, one of the most humorous moments of our coaching, because it did, like, it happened over and over. I would just like gently bring you this thing that I was like low key proud of, but was actually like a really big deal. And I would be like, I did this thing. And then you would be like, that's amazing. How are you going to celebrate? And I would be like, did you celebrate? Is that the word you said? Like it always caught me by surprise.
Every time.
It happened so many times. I was like, how do I keep forgetting this? But I did, which is telling, right? And it was this huge disconnect for me because as a person, like I love to celebrate. Like I'm a very playful person. Like I'm pretty happy-go-lucky. I love to shoot from the hip. Like when those things are true of me, that's when I'm functioning in like a healthy place for my person. And it was like, I had none of that in my finances. And I was like, ooh, that's a big red flag. That's me, trying to put on like a different persona to be a person who has wealth rather than just integrating this new fact about my life into who I am. And so the celebration purchases have really unlocked that for me. And in the beginning, it was such like a visceral retraining of my brain, because every time I made a celebration purchase, every time I even allowed myself to celebrate or like heard you say, you need to celebrate that. What's your joy purchase? Every time I actually thought about that and clocked it and did it, it was me telling my brain and my body, like, you're safe. It's okay. You get to be you in this moment. And that was the beginning of a lot of unlocking for me. This idea of being celebratory with my money, of allowing myself to celebrate concretely with the money that I had made. It sounds obvious to me now, but it was not. It was a big hurdle.
Mm-hmm. Because I think part of it was not wanting to acknowledge the financial results you had created, the business results you had created, because like small starving artist Emily was so afraid she wouldn't be able to maintain it. So if we don't acknowledge it, right, we don't have to maintain it. And we know we can be scrappy and live down here. But acknowledging what we've created means now we have to maintain it. And I think that came with some pressure in your brain, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, that's still a knee-jerk reaction that I'm fighting. Like even with last year, my first year in business, having made $500,000 right out of the gate,
Mm-hmm.
I probably had a day where I was able to celebrate that. And then I had to go back and deal with the thoughts that immediately flooded in, which were like, what if you can't sustain it? And I think that goes back to this idea that I'm still unpacking and it's still a part of me, but that I'm getting better at dealing with. This idea of like, don't look at it. Don't look at it. And then you don't have to deal with it. And then maybe you can live at this stasis. Like, nobody move. Nobody move. You know, it's like a Jurassic Park moment. It's like she can't see us if we don't move. And it's ridiculous. You know, it's such a silly thing, but it is. Like, I can also have compassion for it because it's born out of years of struggling really hard and years of living fearfully with my money. And so, yeah, just this idea of beginning to be comfortable with looking at things and not being frozen in that place of don't move. It's okay. Just don't look at it. Don't think about it. Don't talk about it. Certainly don't celebrate it. And then maybe you can hold on to it. And yeah, it's like letting go of that scrappy identity. Because you're right. I know I can live there, but becoming comfortable with knowing that I can live as a 6-figure business owner.
Yeah.
And thinking like, you can live there too. You're all right.
Yeah. And what was so interesting to me about your 500K year is that it took you by surprise. You were not expecting those numbers because, and this is where, when you mentioned earlier, you were like, that avoidance of looking at the numbers like sneaks in places that you didn't expect it. And so one of those places was you have agency work and then work you get on your own. Yeah. And you were saying that like, you just didn't calculate the agency work into your numbers because that way it could just be bonus money. And like, I'm not going to look at it and I'm not going to calculate it. It's just going to be bonus. So your actual income for the year surprised you because you weren't calculating it into. And why do you think that you wanted that surprise? We talked about this in coaching, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I have this like great memory of me like kind of not shamefully, but just like hesitantly admitting like, yeah, I don't really factor in agency work because, you know, I just let it be a surprise. And you were like, why? And I was like, I'm not comfortable with that question. Like, I don't want to talk about it, Brooke. Yeah. But it, you know, yeah, that was like, that's a more recent one because you're right. I didn't know that I had a 500K year until December. And I got a charitable giving receipt. And then I like put some numbers together and I was like, oh my gosh, like I made more than $500,000, blew my mind. Right. And that was an important moment for me because it was like, well, how did you not know? And it was because I was just like not calculating all of this agency stuff. And that feeling of like wanting to be surprised, like I do love surprises. Like I give myself a pass on that one. It's like, well, sure, that's true of me. But it's also like kind of it was just like a friendly last holdout of don't look at it.
And it's also a little bit of a trauma response too, from all of us who are artists and who have seen the numbers get so close to zero or overdraft. Everything in our body wants to avoid that feeling. So you not looking at what your brain knew was a large chunk of money, it was like, that me avoiding that means that when I do look at my overall numbers, it's going to be so much more than I think it is. So a huge part of our work together too was having compassion for those responses, for how that did happen. Like, it wasn't like, how could you not look at your agency numbers, right?
Not at all.
It was like, of course this happened. And also now we're going to look at our agency numbers and we're going to calculate it into your goals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, it all like, it's so interesting. Because it's like, it's also tied in with this idea that I have and that I struggle with, which is like, ooh, lucky you, look at this great big chunk of money that you have now just in case. And that's tied into several things, like this idea of lucky you, which I've had many people respond to me with that sort of phrase when they've heard about my life. And that not just now. I mean, when I was an actor, and I'm barely scraping by, when I was a theater actor, barely scraping by. And people would say to me like, "Oh, lucky you, you don't have to have a real job." And that always was like, knife to the heart for me, because I worked so hard, and me working hard was important to me. I wanted to be a hard worker. That's a whole nother thing. But to have people, look at your life and be like, lucky, that is, to me, that's been a real struggle. That's something that I have carried with me and struggled with for more than a decade. And this idea of like, it's funny to look at an example, like not looking at my agency numbers. And it's funny to watch myself embrace that kind of logic in a way, to where it's like, ooh, I am really lucky. Look at all this money I have from these agencies. Lucky me. And it's like, you're not lucky. You worked for that. You worked really hard for that. And it's okay if you look at it and look at those numbers, and you don't have to hold them aside just in case something else goes wrong. You did that. So you get to use it, and you get to look at it, and you get to factor it into your business. And you can reject that mindset that says like, ooh, you're so lucky, because it's not true.
So there's like three things that I want to like tangentially go down from here. One of them is actually spending more of your money is something we worked on. The other thing is the identity of no longer calling yourself a starving artist and stepping into the identity of, right, like I am making a lot of money and like I'm not lucky, I made this. And then the third thing is releasing that second part of your identity, which is the hustle piece of like, what if it is easy? What if my job is so easy and I lean into the ease and make so much more money than ever before? So those are the three places we're about to go next. I'm going to let you choose which one you want to go down first.
Ooh, let's talk about the what if it gets to be this easy.
What if it gets to be this easy? Yes. And I remember it was one of our recent calls where we were talking about this hustle, because one of the things that came from one of your CEO parties was, I'm not a fan of my weekly schedule. I'm feeling at capacity. I can't imagine. You also have a goal for $1 million a year that came out of those CEO parties. I can't imagine doing that with my current schedule. So we were looking at capacity and we were looking at hustle. And it's this, right? Like this holding on to that last piece of your identity of I'm worthy because I hustle. And like, what if you can release that? Tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, that has been like a recent thing that I feel like we've been able to tackle, because we've done a lot of the deep work of working with money already. And so, I mean, we're getting into some very pertinent things, like we've talked about before. It's like money coaching is never just money coaching. And I didn't know. Like when I signed up, I was like, money, yay, we're going to deal with money. And it's like, no, actually, it's basically like going to therapy. So get ready to delve into every corner of your life, because money touches everything.
Yeah. Sneak attack life coaching.
Yes, totally. And we talked so much in the beginning, about how like money is an amplifier. And I think a lot of my fear in the beginning came from like, well, what if I'm not amplifying the right thing? Like, what if what I do and what I say and what I am is not worthy of amplification? So anyway, like super deep stuff. And it's continued in this year, that we've continued coaching together as we've gotten closer to the present, because it's like, I struggled for so long with this idea, with fighting against this idea that I felt like strangers had about me, which who knows if they had it or not. It's pretty immaterial. But, I carried this thing that was like, everybody thinks I have this career because of luck, and I don't. I have it because of hustle. And that's been something that I've carried as fundamental to my identity for a really long time. And like, I'm a try hard. Like, you're going to find me trying. You're going to find me, trying my best. I'm a yes man. Like, I'm going to do it. Yes, absolutely. And that's great. Like, that's one of the reasons my business has been so successful, is because I'm plucky, I'm chipper. I, like to do well by my customers, but I can be that and get divorced from this idea of always having to hustle. It was like a reactive part of my identity, because I had been told, how lucky you are to be an actor. Ooh, how lucky you are that you get to do what you love for a job. And, here I am just like barely keeping my head above water. And so in reaction to that, my response was like, I work very hard at what I do. I went to grad school. I suffered in grad school. I suffer as an actor. Like I got to the end of this super hard contract and I had $300 in the bank because they don't pay people, just like, let me show you my badge of suffering so that you know that I'm not lucky. I'm a hustler. And recently we've begun to untangle that. And I had a really like wonderful moment that's been super important to me in just the last couple of months. In my booth, I used to have this banner and it said hustle. And I have had it up in my office, in my studio, wherever, like as long as I've been doing voiceover, like it's even been part of my brand. Like my tagline is easygoing sound, professional hustle, which maybe I need to redo that sometime.
I actually didn't know that was your tagline. Clocking that for our next coaching session.
Yes, it is. Yeah. But, just the idea. So like I had that banner in my studio, and a few weeks ago on one of our calls, you were like, why don't we replace that? And I was like, yeah, we should. So I took it down, and you told me like, just put up a meme and like write something funny on it, like put up something that makes you laugh and remind yourself that there's no such thing as a voiceover emergency. And it was in the context of like, what if this gets to be easy? What if it is just your job to say words on a page and make a crap ton of money doing that?
Oh, I'm feeling all of the actors and artists out there cringing. And I remember saying that to you. I was like, what if our jobs actually are so easy and so fun? What if we just like play dress up and we are just saying words? And what if we lean into that? Like, why are we so hell bent on being like, no, it's so hard and this is a real job? What if it's fucking not? What if it's fucking not a real job and we get to make a lot of money doing it? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like what is so like morally wrong with that? Like why do I have to suffer for my art? And like we all know, right? We all know intuitively that our greatest work doesn't come out of like suffering. Like our greatest work happens when our lives are open, when they are light, when we're able to play. Like that's why it's called a play. It's because we're playing. And like I'm so guilty of this, just feeling like I really had to like suffer for my art. And it's like, you know what? I don't necessarily think those are like those performances where I was holding on like so white knuckled. I'm going to go ahead and guess that that's not when I was at my best. And it's like what we do with auditions. You know how your best audition is always when you don't need a job? Like that's when I've booked all of my best gigs, is when it's like I go in thinking I've booked something and I kick ass at the audition because I don't care. I don't need it. This is just for fun. Oh, I just had this on my schedule. I'm just going to take the reps. I'm going to do it.
Right.
And it's like, that's when you blow people out of the water and they want to work with you. And it's like we all intuitively, or deep down at least, know that our best work comes out of a place of ease and lightness and play. And yet we spend all this time like self-flagellating and being like, no, I do work hard. I am an artist. I'm an actor,
Right.
And I don't really think, for me, doesn't serve me.
Right. Because in every acting class, every artistic profession, you are told when you are in coaching or classes or whatever, it's like, release the tension when you're like holding like this and everything comes out strained. And like we are literally told to release, and that's when our best work comes out. And so it's interesting that in the actual like business lifestyle side of it. We're like, no, we need to hustle and go and do it. And we have that identity. And so what happens is, and what you experienced is when it actually did start coming easily, when you did start making a lot more money and booking gigs easily, easy breezy is something that you wrote, then that like hustle and like, I gotta be proving started to trickle into other areas of your life. Yes. And it started to like create busy work and create problems and obstacles where there were none. One of them being your schedule. Tell me your thoughts.
Yes, that is so true. It's like, and this is a super recent revelation. Last year I spent a month in Montana, which was amazing. I was just like, I'm going to go to Montana for a month. And like, I worked, I had like a studio, I have a studio, that I can take on the road. And so I worked in my road studio and it was awesome. But I spent most of the time sick. And I was like, because I don't really get sick. Like, that's not super common for me, like pretty healthy as a rule. And I was just like, why? Like, why am I sick? Why am I like in pain? What, like, I couldn't sleep towards the end of the trip. And, some of that might be homesickness, sure. But all of it, we started to really unpack in our coaching last fall. Like, wait a minute, are some things about how you're working and your hustle mentality that will never quit? Are some of those things perhaps leaking into your body? And like, is she trying to tell you something? And that blew my mind when we talked about it after that month in Montana, because I was like, oh my word. And I will often, like, I just came back from a trip a couple of days ago and I spent most of that trip not feeling super well. And but like, at least this time I started to clock it and I was like, okay, this is happening again. And it always tends to happen. Like when I go out of town, that's when everybody wants to book me. It's always the way it goes. And so I was working like crazy and there were a lot of factors, but I was just like, okay, this is really interesting. That like, as I'm trying to kind of de-escalate the hustle, my body is at points actively resisting me. But how could it not? Because I've trained it for all of these years to feel like it needs to go like this in order to be safe. And so now what I'm actively doing is cultivating a life where I have a little bit more space and I can live with open hands. And I'm going through a time right now where I feel like I'm detoxing from the hustle.
Yes.
Where my body is like, no. And I'm just having to remind her, like, you're all right. You're okay. You're safe.
Especially because so I want to talk about Montana and the bus, because these two things came out of, as we implemented your money flow and we gave intentions to all of your money, you were like, I have a lot of money to spend and I don't know what to do with it. Yes, and I was like, what do you want to spend your money on? And so one of these things was the bus with a voiceover studio inside of it, which I'm going to let you talk about. And then the other one was like, I don't know, maybe I want to buy property. And it was like, why don't you go take a trip and see what it's like to live in Montana? And so it was this brand new thing that you are allowing yourself to do, which is like travel, explore, take this like literal moving studio and drive your studio to these new locations. Like your nervous system is acclimating to all of it. And you have clocked this, right?
Yeah.
So talk about the bus, talk about the trips, talk about, some of that new stuff that you've been implementing.
Yeah. So the bus is like, I love the bus. It's like my freedom machine, and
I love that.
Yeah. I think that's been one of like the enduring things that I've watched kind of develop in myself over the last year of coaching, is like, because I've asked myself so many times, like, what do I want to do with all of this cash? And one of the priorities that's risen to the surface is freedom. I love to be free. I love working for myself. I love not having a boss. I mean, I am my boss. Like, I think I'm a great boss. I love having myself for a boss. And so I've been actively looking for ways to let that live, to let that be, to let that be a priority for me. And one of the things one of the like mantras that I really wanted to move away from early in my voiceover career was that this work is like a golden set of handcuffs, because it's like, and like that's a common mantra in the industry, because it's like, you got to be on, depending on what kind of work you're doing. Like somebody's going to call when you go out of town. Like if you have a career that is very vibrant and really active, and you have clients that want to come back to you, like somebody's going to call and they're going to need it yesterday. And, I think out of that, a lot of people feel like, well, I can't go anywhere. I have to be in my studio. Everything has to be locked down. And that narrative really did not suit me. I didn't like that. And so I was like, how can I get around this? So last year, just about a year ago, I was in Los Angeles for some meetings, not related to voiceover at all. And I was in a hotel room. And of course, somebody called, and I had my mic, and I had like enough things like to travel with that I could kind of make it work, but I was like pillow forting it, and it was not great. And I was just so irritated, and like I was right by like the air conditioning units, and it was terrible. Like it was really rough to try to get work done. And I texted my brother, and I was like, this is for the birds. And he, like, my brother is he's of the same mind as me in terms of like really coming up and really loving like harebrained schemes, like just unlikely things. It's like, oh, that's where we live. We love that. So I texted him and I was like, this is for the birds. I can't do this. Like, I got to have a mobile studio. And so we started looking at buses, because schoolies, like converted school buses are kind of popular right now for like mobile living period. And so we looked at school buses, we looked at vans, and we probably looked for 3 weeks. And then we found this bus in Missouri, and it was in good shape. And we were like, let's go get this bus. And it was more, now that I look back on it, more than I had ever paid for a vehicle. Because I've always bought used, like I've very rarely financed a car. And I didn't finance this one. I had the cash, and I was like, this is a chunk of cash. I'm going to do it. So we drove up, we saw the bus, we test drove it, and I bought it. And that kicked off this whole monster process of developing even like the template for putting a mobile recording studio inside a bus. And again, it was one of those things that I'm sure many folks, if I had been really forthright about it and like told a lot of people about it in the recording industry, it probably would have been like, that's not a good idea. Here are all the reasons it won't work. And, but again, like for me, it represented freedom and the ability to just go where I wanted and still work. And that first trip out, I took a big trip right after I got the bus, like the month after. Like we had barely gotten the studio constructed, and it became a family project. Like I worked on it with my dad and my brother, and
you also painted it teal, which I love.
Yes. Yes, it's beautiful. Like every time, I was just saying this to my brother last week in Colorado, I was like, every time I'm out in the bus, like my bus is the prettiest bus. Like,
yeah, she is.
It's so beautiful. And it's a real head turner when you're going down the road. But it became this great family project, and then we took it out. Like we went, it was like a family trip to see family in Oregon. We went to Oregon, we went to Seattle, we came across Montana, like a monster trip. And I worked the whole time as I needed to. And when I got back, I had netted from that one trip, just in VO from that trip, I believe I netted like, I think it was 30K in the bus, just in that like 2-week trip.
Yeah.
And I was like, this works. This is sustainable. So long, golden handcuffs. And like the ability to use my money to increase the amount of freedom in my life. Like the reality that I could take cash that I had made and turn it into something that could carry me, my job, my family across the country on an essentially a giant joyride, I was like, this is it.
Right.
This is the kind of
Right.
stuff I want to be doing with my money.
And the fact that that was something that unlocked freedom for you and also is going to allow you to make more money. Like one of
Yeah.
those things I hear all the time is like, I want to have my money work for me. I want to
Yeah.
like make wise money decisions. So you buying a school bus in Missouri might not, for like some financial guru, be like, that's not a wise money decision. But for
Totally.
you and your lifestyle as an artist and your desires, which are freedom,
Yep.
right? Like that school bus purchase and converting it into a voiceover studio, like you saying yes to using your money that way on the table allowed you to have that brilliant idea, right?
Yeah.
That now gets to follow you and gets to be utilized by you and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it like, yeah, that was one of, I mean, that's been one of the biggest moves I've made in my business since I jumped out on my own. And I did it like pretty early on.
Yeah, it was like a month in.
Yeah, it really was. It was like a month in. Yeah. And I mean, again, like it kind of goes back to that idea that we've talked about so much, which is like, you don't have to change who you are to be really good with money. Like you still get to be you. And like that bus, that's like a classic me. You know, it's like, you want to do what now? But like it fits me like a glove.
Yep.
Like I was just in Colorado for 2 weeks. And most of the time I was parked outside my brother's apartment. It's snowing, it's freezing cold, but I'm in my booth with my beanie on, you know, working for IHOP. And it's like, it works. It's great.
Right.
And yeah, it's so true, you know?
And this is the thing about when artists and creatives envision wealth, when you're in that starving artist mindset, you put this like wall between like me and them. And when you think about wealth and riches, you think about luxury hotels, designer clothes, diamond studded things, first class flights, all of that stuff that's just like your brain connects with wealth and riches. But what I love so much and like why I'm so excited to have you here, like on this podcast episode, is because your version of wealthy is so drastically different. It's a bus. It's taking yourself to shepherding camp. It's buying real estate. It's having ducks. Like it is all of this stuff that is so not like the initial thought pattern of like what wealth equals. So I'd love for you to talk about like, what has wealth equaled for you? Like, what are the things that you're envisioning? What are the things you have in your life? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it is. That's such a powerful area of conversation and something that we delved deeply into in the beginning, because I had all these ideas of like, well, I can't be a wealthy person because wealthy people are like this. And that has to do with a lot of things. That has to do with, again, kind of in us versus them mentality, which really doesn't serve me at all, nor is it even true. And it you know, it ties into my identity as a hustler. You know, wealthy people don't hustle. They just inherit it from somebody else. And it's like, well, that's demonstrably untrue. And like, I had all of these limiting beliefs around like how I wasn't like them. And number one, that's like a super judgmental place to sit. And
we
also
sat in that for a full coaching session too, and like felt the discomfort of like, where is this judgment actually coming from? We traced it back and we sat there, because when you actually do try and figure out and like logically figure out this us and them and where your brain is at, it's sticky. It brings some shit up.
And I mean, it was like, it's embarrassing to me because I was like, I don't really consider myself like somebody who sits on high and like makes calls about people and how they live their lives. Like, I don't want to be, that's not who I am, but it was kind of who I was, you know?
It's who all of us are. We all have essences of it, you know?
Yes. And especially like a lot of mine was centered on money. And I was like, wow, okay. And so releasing that was step number one for sure, for like finding out what my version of wealth looks like. And this really lovely thing has happened as all of this income has come my way through my business. And it's funny, like it's, I think in the beginning, again, I thought like, well, if I look at this, it's going to change who I am. And the opposite of that has happened. Like what has actually happened when I have a little more room or a lot more room in my finances, I've just gone back to being who I was when I was like 8,
That's what happened.
It is. And so like, here I am, I have a home, which I never thought I would be able to do, especially not as a single woman. I just thought like, well, that's just not in the cards for me. I own 2 homes. And at the home where I live, I have a bunch of ducks, dogs, geese, and like this big old like 1-acre yard. I have been able to be a landing pad for my parents who sold their house a while back. And to be able to say to my people, I got you, come live with me. I got plenty of room. It really is just like, I mean, like, I love animals. I kind of want to be a rancher. Like, I love my family. I want to be there for them. Like, it's all these really, like, it's this kind of sweet coming of age where I'm going back to who I was and what I wanted when I was like 8 to 12 years old.
Right.
And I've not become a different person. In fact, my money has enabled me to become more who I am than I was before. And the freedom of that, and just like I mean, honestly, there's nothing better than having room to be generous.
Yeah.
Like to be able to step in when somebody's in need.
Talk about some examples, because there have been very specific moments that we've talked through. If you were like, I love that I am able to use my money for these things. Can you give us some examples of that in the past year?
I mean, the freedom to pick up the tab, no matter what the tab is, if I'm out with people I love, to go out with people who are maybe like 10 years, back up the road, who are in like their mid-20s and they're hustling as artists and as actors. And I know what that life is like. And I know the pressure. And to be like, I got it. Like to go out to dinner with those people, talk about business, pick up the tab. Or to like see a young family that's struggling and know that it's no problem for me to hand them a couple $1,000. Like what's better? It's just like that level of freedom I just never anticipated having. And like to know that like if somebody in my family needs something, I can help. I can help like in very practical ways. Somebody needs something, I can help. And I don't have an immediate circumstance where people ever count on me for that. And like, that makes it even sweeter. It's like, nobody's asking for me to do this. Nobody's trying to horn in on the fact that I'm making a lot of money now. It's just me having the freedom to give generously, to give at my church or to just like random people or to my family or picking up the tabs for buddies. Like I love that.
And you were able to, it was the holidays, I believe, where your family all gets together and there's always like such a chaotic trying to make the decision of where are we going to stay? We got to get the house. Who's going to do it? And you literally just said, I got this, y'all. And like got the Airbnb or got the house. And like, it wasn't just about the financial piece of it, but you were like, I'm just going to bypass all of that, like email back and forth, the chaotic, whatever. I've got it. Here's the place. We can all come.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean that to not have to coordinate that, and like, I got really tickled because I did that and I was so happy about it. And then like literally everyone slipped me cash because that's how my family is. And I was like, I love you guys. You guys are great. Like I tried, but you wouldn't let me. Cool. Okay. But like, just to be able to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna make this happen.
Yeah.
Like that's a powerful and like wonderful and gracious thing to be able like to just have circumstances where it's like, I got it.
Yeah.
I love being that. Like, I love being able to be that for people because people have been that for me. Like I've been in the airport with like not enough money to pay the overage fee on my suitcase, didn't have $20, crying in the airport. I've had somebody come to me and be like, I got it. Like, let me slip you a 50, a stranger. And it's like, when people have shown up for me so many times in my life and just been that person who says, I got you, I got it. I've had so much of that in my life, so many people. have showed up for me in that way. And to be able to show up for people in that way, I mean, it's wonderful to do it emotionally, but now to be able to do it monetarily, physically, like it's just, it was so unlooked for in my life. And I feel so grateful that I'm able to do that, because it is such a powerful thing to say to somebody, I got you. I got this.
And you are such a generous human being to start. Like, that's one of the first things that when we met, I was like, oh my gosh, the heart on this woman, right? Like the generosity and the kindness and the acceptance and all of that. And so to watch your wealth grow and to see your generosity and your kind heart compound with money. And that's what I want everyone listening to this to hear, especially as artists, especially if you have the thought, money makes people evil, money changes people. No, it doesn't. It amplifies people who got some nasty shit going on or got some hurt and stuff in their brains that are causing them to act and do things, right? Like in the wrong energy. But if you have a good heart and you're generous to start, that just compounds with wealth. One of the things that we actually had to work on in coaching, I'm like, Emily, you are giving so much to other people. I need you to go buy yourself something pretty. I was like, you need to spend X amount of dollars on you. Like that was your homework, because your bent was to be generous and give to others.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's, like it's a powerful thing. Both sides of that are powerful. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to be able to give to others and to be generous with what you've earned and what you've been given. That's a wonderful thing. But what I found was that sometimes I was almost hiding behind that. Or maybe not hiding behind it, but that I was afraid to do anything else, that I was afraid to use my money. Yeah. And, to buy something nice. Like I was afraid to do that. Because it was almost like this very weird, like, just this strange energy of like, if I do anything with this money that is selfish, then like it's going to be gone. And that is some weird, like karma based stuff that does not hold with what I believe at all. Yeah. And coaching has been so good for me, because it's been this process of being able to uncover where my actions don't line up, or my beliefs don't line up with my deep beliefs, with my ethos of how I live and what I think and what I believe. And to be able to have the space to uncover that and to go, wait a minute, does that line up? Does that really line up with what you think and what you believe? And a lot of times the answer was no. And so to realign like with how I manage my money has been part and parcel with realigning just with myself and what I believe.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Come join me on Instagram for more on how to build a simple, sexy relationship with your money. My Instagram handle is @NotStarvingArtists. And if you want to dive deeper with me, head to the show notes to learn more about one-on-one coaching. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend that you want to get rich with.